In this video, we're going to take this idea a bit further and get a bit more creative with the idea of processing sounds in parallel. In case you've had a little break since the last video, let's listen to this beat again. We created this parallel chain and sent the beat to this bus or this return track. I'm going to turn it off and we can hear the beat. And I'll turn it on. I'll back that off a bit as well. Sometimes, in order to keep the dynamics of a signal, it's useful to process things in parallel. We have the option later on of adjusting this mix. Let's take it further. As well as adding smack, which we did here, I'm just going to call this smack so we remember. I would like to add a bit of colour and weirdness. Let's think about something we don't usually do with drums, which is modulation effects. I'm going to put a phaser on my drum kit here, and we'll listen to how terrible this sounds. Okay, so it has a certain charm to it if you like phasers, if you're into the 70s, but we're doing lots of weird stuff with the sub and everything's kind of wobbling around. This isn't particularly useful to mix with. Let's play with doing this in parallel. So I just added a new bus, a return track. I'm going to drag this phaser onto it and solo it. I'll send my drum kit to that return track. And so what we might do, working in parallel, is be selective about the kind of sounds we're treating. I don't want to treat my kick drum or the low end because, as I said, it gets phasey and wobbly and weird. And maybe I want to dip the sound around 1500K where we're very sensitive. Okay, so now I've kind of got a bit of interesting high-end stuff happening. But because I'm working the high end, I might play with the stereo field. So maybe I'm going to add some tremolo to this. Maybe quite fast. And what I might also do is add some saturation, make it a bit gritty. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. I'm going to unsolo it, turn it down, and fade it in until it sits nicely. I can turn it off. This reminds me of like overhead cymbals. When you record a drum kit, you have this kind of phasey, chorusy kind of mess at the top. This is a nice way of recreating it. You could go really far and add an OTT here, which is basically lots of expansion and compression. Let's try something else. I'm going to add another return track, send my drum kit to it, and solo it. And let's play with the low end. Let's say that I like the low end of this, but it lacks a certain kind of modern oomph to it. Using a graphic EQ that you'll find in any DAW, I can easily locate the fundamental frequency of my kick drum, as we can see from this diagram. We can also see some of the harmonics. One of these is located at around 100 Hertz. One of them is located more around 63 Hertz. Looks like a B. And in fact, that's the one I think I'll play with. Why am I choosing that? Well, 63 Hertz will be able to translate on most systems, so it makes sense to play with that frequency, boost it, and I'll just find the correct shape to do this with. There we go. Okay, at this point it's quite subtle, but can you hear the difference? I'll turn it off. Oh, hang on. We definitely have a tone. Maybe for fun, I'll duplicate this effect. Now we really hear it. Let's even add a little bit of saturation. Maybe not quite so much. I'll turn the gain down going into this. Okay, so now I've created a tonal underlay to this kick drum. Once again, I'm going to unsolo it and fade it in. Cool. So right now we have fizz at the high end. We have donk. I'm enjoying my naming strategy today. And I think we need a little bit of slap back. So the final thing we'll try today is to add another bus or return track. Again, send that to this and solo it. We've played with the highs, we've played with the lows. Let's play with the snare. In this case, I want to create a slap back echo. First, I'm going to set up quite a small space. Then I'm going to EQ out the low end of this reverberation. Maybe take the low from the input as well. Cool. Here's the magic dial. We're going to add some pre-delay. So we can hear this ghost-like echo. And I might finish that up by turning up the highs a bit with some EQ. Finally, I'm going to turn this reverb or set it to play in mono, so we don't have any difference between left and right. This will help stop our mix from getting muddy as we're working with the low mids, which is generally a dangerous place for stereo activity unless we're being quite intentional about what we're doing. I'm going to unsolo it and again fade it in. Maybe I'll mute my other sends or return tracks. turn it off. Can you very subtly hear that space? I'll overdo it so you can hear it properly. And the reason this works, or at least sounds quite clean and controlled, is because we've used pre-delay. The original signal happens, and then 46 milliseconds later, in this case, a reverberation occurs. So our brains are able to hear the hit of the drum, and then after that, the reverberation, and they don't conflict or mask each other out. It's a very short delay, so it decays in time for a new hit to occur. So in this case, we have a nice sense of space. Let's finish off by hearing all of our return tracks. I'm going to call this slap back. I'll back off on these a little bit because we always go a bit too far when we're designing a sound. While it might take a little time to set up and be a bit fiddly, this technique changes this very banal and simple drum loop quite a lot. For my final trick, I will change the drum sound just so we can hear it in different contexts. Let's open up this rack and find a new kit. Let's try a trusty old 808 first. Definitely adds a bit of grit. It's worth noticing that our donk is now not perhaps in the correct place. We'd have to fix that. Great. So I hope that's been useful, and I encourage you to experiment with these return tracks or these parallel processing tracks, add different effects, find your favorites, and always remember to make a note or save any setup you find that really works. I'll see you next time.